we're back with an ongoing series on the channel. So previously, I had you read the first 3 volumes of the series all in one go, and it's The Abandoned Empress, of which we have volume 4, volume 5, volume 6, and volume 7.
Was
And
it
the
three in one go? I thought it was one and then two and three, but not that it
Oh, it might have
matters.
been 1 and then 2 and 3, but you've read the first 3.
Yeah.
Um, the only reason we did 4 this time is because these are actually thinner than the average manhwa if you compare them to the other volumes, and I happen to have 4 at the time. Oh,
Don't lie,
and
you just hate me.
well, no, I was trying to take into account the fact that you said you liked when you could read more, like when we actually got to important plot points because we were able to read more than a single volume. Because I sometimes I forget that like these are not typically meant, like this is not the chapter layout that they're in when they're on the webtoon or the comics apps that I
Hmm.
read them on. And so the chapters are broken up much differently when I read them as to when they get to the books even, and then when they get to the books, sometimes it's deceptive how long it can take for something to happen. Um,
The story pacing's just a lot slower in these than you would expect in traditional manga, I think, because these are releasing like week to week to week.
yeah,
So
these are
it can be a little
releasing,
slower.
yeah, week to week in smaller chunks. And so you're kind of reading them more constantly. I will say that based on the checking I did on Tappytoon, because these are legally available to read via Tappytoon. That is the website that hosts the online version. And then they're also being published in English officially, as you can see here. Um, According to Tappytoon, we are in, this takes us into the middle of season 3. So that kind of in regards to what you're thinking about pacing, like this is the middle of season 3. There have already been 2 hiatuses since the series started publishing, because there's a hiatus every year. The season ends, the author gets a couple of weeks off, and then they start again.
Now I can kind of take a guess at where each of the seasons have ended.
Honestly, I was actually surprised because I was looking at where season 3 starts, and season 3 starts just so all of the the candidates for the position of mistress or whatever,
Mhm.
concubine, that's when they are first seen. That's when season 2 ends.
That's what I actually thought would be season
Yeah.
two's end. Where did season one end?
Let me check. So season 1, it looks like season 1 ends right after, like, just an episode or 2 after she ends up going to the ball with him that first time in the matching outfits.
So we went right through season two and started season three. Because if she went to the ball with him, that was
The
all
ball
part
was
of.
in the first 3 volumes.
Okay, so never mind then. Never
So
mind.
no. We started in season 2.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We started in season 2.
Sorry, it's been
Um
a minute.
and we basically read our way through the entirety of season 2 pretty much all in one go. And then started, and then now we're about halfway through season 3. So it's going at a good pace. I will say that currently, um,
You just gave a look.
well, so remember how, so when we first read these, I told you when we read volume 1, I did not like this series when I first read it. And what I did was I read like the first like 10-15 episodes, and I just wasn't getting into it, and I just put it down and I didn't pick it back up until I had the paper books and I was reading them with you. So since volume 1, this has all been information I haven't really covered yet, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, I know the ending, right? Because I've known the ending for a while. Like I knew what happened. So, but this was all new content for me in terms of what was actually happening. I went to look to see how far ahead the series was. We're actually close to the end. Like we've got maybe 2 volumes max to the end of this series.
We might just finish the series all at once.
Yeah, no, we will, because the series ends at the end of season 3. Yeah. And I did not realize that. For some reason, I thought, I will say, for all that I joke about like some of these having like multiple seasons and seeming to go on for a long time, every single one of these I've read does tend to end within 100 to 250 episodes of like the webtoon, and that really doesn't translate to like 30 volumes. So these are quite succinct compared to like some other things. So yeah, no, this series is going to end at like 8, 9, 10 volumes max. But I'm
Eh,
thinking it looks like 9.
hmm.
So we're doing good. We're well past halfway.
Well past halfway. It sounds like we're closing in on like 4/5 of the way, if not 5/6.
As far as I can tell, based on the episode covers, right now we're somewhere around season 3, episode like 15 to 20, and it only goes to episode 58.
Not much left then.
No, so
Wouldn't this be awful if we only had one volume left?
no, I think it's at least 2 because I've got a pre-order out for the last 2 books, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Because this is an old series that the pre-orders have been active for a while, and I typically put them in pretty early. So I think I've got because I've seen the cover for Volume 8 because Volume 8's arriving soon, and I
Holy
don't think it's the
shit.
end.
We finish um a transmigration story.
Wait,
The
actually, that's gonna be wild. To be fair, though, a lot of the other transmigration stories that we're reading aren't completed. Like for example, Remarried Empress is still ongoing, so it's not kind this is like I said, this series came out a lot longer ago originally. So it obviously has already finished. I knew it had already finished because I knew the ending. I just didn't realize it had finished so soon. But stepping away from the impending ending, um let's talk about volumes well, yeah, let's talk about volumes 4 through 7. So a lot of stuff goes down. So volume 4, when we left off in volume 3, she was headed to the country estate of the Carsons, I think, the redhead male protagonist. She was headed to their family estate to spend some time in the countryside after having the ball with the crown prince that the emperor kind of pushed them to have. And when she gets back from the country, so which also she has a huge set of like volume 4 is kind of studied throughout with her having like traumatic memory spikes and events where
Mhm.
she is literally waking up like in cold sweats or screaming from the terror of what happened to her. Like she has PTSD and is actively suffering in volume 4.
I mean, I don't blame her. I think I remember what happened in volume one. Like that was terrible.
Yeah, no, it was fucking awful. And so by the end of volume 4, she heads back to the capital, I think, and she tells her father that she wants to take over as the Knights commander. And the way for her to do that is to become a knight. So she becomes like apprentice knight. She works in the palace, and dresses like a knight, practices swordsmanship, and she actually spends the next 3 volumes working in the palace, kind of as like an administrative aide to the prince and the knight's order.
Hmm.
Yeah, as stuff goes on around her. To be honest, she's kind of passive in a way to the plotting that is going on around her because she's so focused on just doing her job in the hopes that because she's been promised that if she succeeds her family, she won't have to marry the crown prince, but to succeed her family, she has to become commander of the knights.
It feels a lot more like a reasonable version of Katarina's character arc from Hamefura, where the initial problem has pretty much been solved at this point. The Emperor is not going to be a dick to her so far,
Yeah, he's
as we can
actually
tell.
really nice to her.
But she's still paranoid for good. We know for good reason, and shit's not done being manipulated around her, so she still has to react to the plot.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting because we actually see a lot going on around her. There's some stuff with her mother and the crown prince that's coming out, and she's kind of encouraging her. she's kind of encouraging her friends alongside her, like they're taking up more proactive positions
Mhm.
in and around her to support her, even though she's not fully aware of this necessarily. Like she's not actively pushing it, it's just happening, if that makes sense. Which I'm perfectly fine with. That like that's great. It makes for a good story. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I do think it's funny that one of the things I like at the end of book 5, right, is that she ends up attending like a party. And the party has like a bunch of other young girls her age, but it also has the Carson boy and the green-haired boy, right? And the girls kind of make the point. They're like, "Huh, I guess the rumors are true or whatever." And she's obviously been oblivious to all this because she's been like working and kind of ignoring the whole social scene of this world, which as a noble, that's kind of something that you shouldn't be doing, especially as a woman. But she's been ignoring it entirely. And so she realizes at this point that she's like, ah, shit, I fucked up. Like everyone thinks that I have something going on with, these men, and I
Everyone thinks I'm
don't.
a whore.
Yet they're gossiping about me, and it's kind of undermining my social status and the power that I wield. And then she actually goes and invites a bunch of the most popular like girls her age and kind of manipulates them in a really smart way. She's like, it's so nice to have girls. And they're like, well, we thought you were friends with those two boys. And she's like, yeah, but they're boys. It's not the same friendship as you can have with a girl. Like she straight up manipulates them into being on her side because like she has social status, she just hasn't been using it up till this
Mhm.
point. And then she chooses to ally herself with a couple of kind of a bunch of up and coming girls. Like girls who are going to be central to kind of social life as she gets older, but maybe right now don't have like the most influence, but she knows from her past life experiences that these will be helpful to her. And to be fair, she does want to be friends with them, but she is manipulating them, and I think that's great. Like
Girl
I
boss.
Yeah, I look, I know it's like one of those cliches, like find people who are going to become useful, manipulate them into being loyal to you in advance of the story, but like it's a good one. It's a genuine way for you to do something, you know? Like if you know that this character is going to create this thing and then they're going to become super famous, get on top of that shit.
Well, she also does it with the to get the accessory maker. She gets the accessory
Yeah, that's
maker.
one of the girls that
No,
she
no,
become.
the guy that like they go to his
Oh
little like
yeah. The
rundown shack and
the
like
fucking weirdo.
like harass him until they get him to agree to work for them.
Yeah, yeah, the weirdo. That was hilarious. There he is. Love him. He's so fucking weird. But yeah, so yeah, the jewelry maker. And she gets that contact through one of the girls because one of the girls knows of him.
I
Which
just love that his reaction every time they come by is just like, fuck your elitist capitalist incentive structure.
and then it's
Then he run
absolutely.
then he loses his actual like tools of the craft and can no longer work without because he can't afford another one.
Yep.
For his own fault, by the way.
Yep. And then, so starting in volume 6, after her first interactions with the jewelry maker, the women who are supposed to be the candidates for a concubine start coming in. And the reason why they're doing candidates for a concubine is because they're like, well, the emperor is sick and the crown prince hasn't taken over and he doesn't have a wife yet currently, and this will put us on like political standing if we accept a candidate from one of these nations or whatever, one of these other empires, political marriage alliance, that sort of thing. So we meet 6 candidates over like the kind of the second half of this book.
Oh,
Obviously
look, it's after 9 o'clock.
this girl on the cover is one of them. There's a bunch more. But we kind of spend the next half of this book and start of the next one like meeting all of the candidates, and then they all have their own little interactions with Aristia. to kind of various different effects. Like one of them is really antagonistic towards her. The blonde girl doesn't really care. Um, they're all from different places and they have different social statuses, but they're still having to like interact. So you have an interesting sort of geopolitical thing happening because it's then revealed the emperor has Aristia wear like a crown at the ball, and one of the girls objects, the one who hated her from the beginning, objects really loudly and vehemently, and then gets called the fuck out.
I mean, the Emperor just walks out there and airs everybody's dirty laundry.
Yeah, he like takes out a dossier on every single one of the girls, and he's just like, your kingdom is impoverished and they want to use us for this. You're doing this. You're spying on us for this other person. You are here because of this thing. And it gets to the blonde girl, and he's just like, do I even need to go on with you? And she's like, no, I withdraw, but can I marry this other guy that I've fallen in love with? And it's the guard captain.
I love the girl that's just like, you don't even need to bring it up. I know what I did. I didn't need this anyways.
Yeah, I think I
It's a
love
different
them.
girl, but it's a like she's implied to be the most manipulative one there, but also was like the runner up in our main character's eyes, like who actually deserved it.
Yeah, yeah, and I fucking love that. I was like, it was great because it was like a verbal smackdown on behalf of all of them. I think it was hilarious. Let's see. 'Cause it was very much like a power play because everyone had been support like the different nobles of the empire had been like supporting different candidates because of their own economic alliances with other kingdoms, some of them.
Mhm.
And so the end they were all trying to manipulate it because the emperor is not well. Like he's been sick for a while. And so the emperor just shows up and he's like, "I'm not that sick, you dumb bitches. I can still kick your asses." We love that. We love that for him.
I could politically ruin all of you in a day.
Yes. Um, and then the shocking Carson admittment.
I am so glad they didn't
Not
drag
Carson,
this out.
sorry.
I know you're talking about
Green.
the manipulative guy.
Yeah, okay, because Carson almost dies, right?
Yeah.
And then oh my god, it's the green haired dude. Alan, that's his name. Alendis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had some like unsubtle like hints that Alendis was maybe not all there. A few books short of a library, if you would.
I think from as far back in like volume two, they've been hinting at his like psychological manipulations and like deeply unstable sort of possessiveness because we keep seeing him like hint at doing things and get these really dark scenes with him ordering or saying things, but we never really got the full picture beyond he seemed to be unusually obsessed with Aristia.
Yeah, he spends like most of the series trying to make Aristia codependent with him.
Yeah, like actively codependent. And then it comes to this part, and he literally goes down and admits to the prince and the emperor that he's been working against them with a different faction, and the only reason why he's turning himself in is because Aristia is in danger, and he doesn't want her dead, and they end up exiling him, like he's sent off uh, to go serve in some far off part of the empire.
I am glad that they brought this to a head now. I kind of thought this would be like the end game conflict. I am
Oh.
so glad they didn't drag this out because I could be like, it's so obvious. He's so skeevy.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a lot to have both him doing that and whatever's gonna be going on with Ji-yoon
Mhm.
to be happening at the same time. Like that would have been a lot, I think.
And
And
I'm glad it ended kind of like it didn't end in this like dramatic blow up between the two of them, like him and Aristia.
mhm. Well, to be fair, she doesn't even know. Like she wasn't told what he was doing. So, like that's wild. Like will she find I assume she'll find out at some point, but I assume that she'll find out in some sort of like ploy near the end game to try to get her to like feel less attached to the crown prince. Maybe?
Maybe.
Like maybe it'll get twisted and told to her or something. I don't know. Or maybe she'll just find out. Who knows? And then Ji-yoon shows up right at the very end. Like
I did
literally. Mhm.
before June shows up, I do love like what got them to the location where she shows up in the first place. Because she shows up at like their little like accidentally magically frozen ice palace that they now retreat to during the summer. Because it's the only time it's tolerable and it's the best place to be when it gets that hot. Um, but the Emperor did not want to go initially.
They
So
basically manipulated and forced him
they
into it.
guilt tripped him into going by positioning all of the guards that were not like his elite guards outside so that when
In
he
the
entered the palace,
sun.
he saw them all dying of heat stroke and felt bad for them, including Aristia, which they specifically made sure to have her out there.
Yeah, like they made her stand out there deliberately because she would be the one he'd care about the most out of all of them.
I
And I
fucking that scene had me dying.
right. I was like, how manipulative. I am in love. This is great. Fucking hilarious. What a especially because like the relationship between the crown prince and his father has been like rocky for
Hmm.
the entirety of the series so far. Like we've seen what's happening, and then his father basically admitted that he's extremely hard on his son because he knows no one else will be because his son is the crown prince and there's not really anyone else who can be hard on him. And the only person who was kind of like soft and parental to him was Aristia's mother, who he lost and Aristia lost when they were young, like very young, almost too young to remember her,
Hmm.
which is kind of an interesting commentary. Like the fact that the emperor is being so harsh on his kid because no one else will be, and he knows it need like his that his kid needs to be, strong. That was interesting, I think,
Hmm.
especially when he's such a doting grandpa on Aristia most of the time.
Aristia is like the oldest child that can do no wrong in his eyes.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was friggin' great. So, June, finally.
It's I'm happy she's finally shown up. I feel like the story like we're gonna get some interesting twists here with her, I think.
Yeah, because in the original series, she doesn't show up till later. But she's shown up now, and Aristia says that she seems different, like already. Like she's acting different than she was in the original story, which makes me curious if more than one person remembers, like if more than Aristia remembers. I don't know. There's also, although here's the other thing. We'll discuss this probably more in the bigger video about the books of this genre, which is almost ready and will be going up relatively soon because we'll be filming it in the next couple of weeks. Because I'm one slide away from being done. So there's a trope in some of these where what ends up happening is when the character's reborn, the traditional villainess character, right? Because Aristia is portrayed as the villainess,
Hmm.
right, of the story because of the way that she treats Jiun, like jealous and arrogant or whatever. Where the villainess actually ends up being kind of mistreated and manipulated by everyone around her so that she appears to be a villainess in reaction. Meanwhile, the protagonist is like actually secretly very manipulative and evil. And I wonder if that's the route they're going to go. Because I have to think in my head, I'm like, this is one of the earlier versions of this trope to be published. Like, granted, it wasn't published into English till now, but it was written earlier than some of the others. And that's a common trope now, having the villainess be like, I died as the villainess, but the protagonist had been manipulating everyone all along and was secretly evil. Will that be where it's going? I don't know. And I'm very curious.
Maybe. I mean, it's interesting because at the same time, I don't like. I'm thinking like we saw like this is one of a unique instance compared to a lot of the ones we've read where we actually saw a good chunk of the original timeline, a really good chunk of it. I don't remember her being that involved with our main character at all in that original timeline. She was there, but she was more the catalyst to the Emperor's horrible mistreatment of her.
Yeah, from what we saw in volume one of the original timeline, it wasn't so much that she was mistreating June at first, but it was more that she was she had been raised like a traditional noble lady, and the things June was doing were like disrespectful to her, and so
Hmm.
she took like so she wouldn't respond well to her. Um, and then that led to just conflict between all three parties involved.
As opposed to like what we see with what's her face, the bitch from
Remarried
Remarried
Empress
Empress.
Trashta,
Trashta, that's it.
which
Where like Trashta is like actively,
manipulating
yeah. So
the yeah.
I'm more than curious to see if we go more that direction with the revelations of what she was doing, or similar to the Emperor, we get more like a because the Emperor, like if I have my series right, and I could have my series wrong, the Emperor in this series has been a lot more like it becomes more obvious that the original timeline, the Emperor is kind of a victim of circumstance.
Yeah, so the crown prince who becomes the
Yeah,
emperor. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because he takes the throne. He was already betrothed to Aristia
Didn't actually like Aristia
at
even
the
in that
time,
original
no.
timeline.
But Aristia was a very different person in the original
Hmm.
timeline. Like her entire her personality per se hasn't necessarily changed, but her experiences have changed her, and so she has altered her way of like behaving from a very young age and is essentially just a different person with different friends, and it's changed the way that the world interacts with her and the way that she interacts with the world, which means the dynamics are changing.
So I wonder how much of a wait, so that already tells me that they're not writing their like the villains of the previous timeline as these two-dimensional like James Bond manipulators.
Mm-hmm. At
So,
least as far as we can tell, although like the some of the same people are in the anti Crown Prince faction, like Duke Jenna,
mhm.
we know is still against the Crown Prince taking over, which, there's nothing has changed to make him not want that because he's not someone that the story interacts with or actively changes.
But like in those
So,
cases, we're given a lot of political context as to like why like the interests these nobles have
hang
with
on a
other
sec.
kingdoms.
Oh, if I got it. Sorry, there's a bug on my screen.
No, you're good.
Um,
I feel like we've
but
got. Oh,
the
go,
other
sorry,
thing
go ahead.
is we know that Jiyun is going to choose to go with Duke Jenna. So is his antagonism towards the Emperor going to change the way that she behaves?
Mhm.
Because she was sponsored by Duke Jenna in the first timeline as well.
Who knows? I feel like with all these characters, we're given really good, well-rounded reasons as to why they take the sides they take.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So you've read 7 volumes of this now. How are you feeling about it?
Generally pretty positive. I mean, I think I've been like I don't remember exactly what my reactions were to the first set. I think I liked the first set, but it was more like it was more like a nice to see these like because the first set did a good job establishing some of its main cast, and I think I like the dynamic because they and we already in that first set saw the Emperor was just like we went from the Emperor being a cruel like abuser in the first volume to okay, no, this is what's actually going on with this character as you move into the second and third volumes.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like that aspect of it. And But going into this volume, this definitely is tickling the same sort of, it's scratching the same itch as Remarried Empress now, where I'm like, okay, I'm liking the court politics angle of this a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. That's one of the more interesting parts of it. Um, I've been keeping up on Remarried Empress, so I'm currently on track with the current chapters coming out, and that's also what's keeping me interested in Remarried Empress is just the court politics. I think in general, maybe one other thing that I enjoy, and this is probably something that strikes me more than it strikes you, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but because I like studying history, and despite the fact that the ancient world is my thing, I do like studying kind of medieval and Renaissance history, and I'm very much into I'm very much into court politics, but to me, it's really interesting to see how women can wield power in such patriarchal court settings. And I think some authors in these reincarnation or transmigration novels are really good at portraying how a woman can manipulate court politics.
I mean, I can absolutely agree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
arguably one of the more interesting characters in, say, early, like some of the early Game of Thrones seasons was Cersei for that very
Mhm.
reason. Just because in these limited environments where they don't have as much power and control inherently, it's interesting to see the ways they do take control.
Yeah, because the ways that like Aristia manipulates the other girls around her to kind of establish herself more firmly in sort of noble society, as opposed to like just trying to act like a knight and the person who's going to inherit a house. I think that's interesting. And I see that maybe it's because I'm a little bit more picky with the transmigration novels I read these days because I've read so many of them, but I tend to stray more towards those these days, where our female main character is actively kind of trying to turn and manipulate politics for her own benefit, and I like that.
Man, now I gotta wonder. Like, I don't know if this is out by now or if this is coming out and like if this is like our like 2 series from now and I'm spoiling this. I'm wondering how you're because you never watched Hame for a season 2, and
I did not.
we're right on the cusp of watching that for the channel if you haven't watched it
Yep.
already. I am very curious to see your reaction now since you watched season 1 for both the channel and on your own, just as you were getting into these kind of stories.
That was what spurred me to get into these stories.
Yeah.
Like that you suggested I watch that and you watched it with me and it sent me down a deep spiral. You are the cause of this.
And it was one of my greatest mistakes.
You are the cause of all of this. You are the cause of your own suffering.
Oh, look, the consequences of my own actions.
Look, here comes the consequence, consequence, consequence. But yeah, so I don't know. For me, I think that's I'm not even necessarily so much in it for I don't give a shit kind of who the final romance is or the fact that these some of these are romance novels. Like that matters very little to me. I'm very much more interested in the different ways that these because the transmigration typically they get reincarnated into either a villain or a side character, and I find it much more interesting to see just how many unique ways authors can write a way for these women to get out of whatever circumstances they're in or kind of avoid what's happening to them in some way. And granted, not all of them are unique. Sometimes you read seven of the exact same book, but under different names.
I'm
Um,
gonna be honest here. My way of tracking who's who I think is the end game romance wise is average out who has the biggest amount. Like if you multiply bad boy to power, the largest one I feel like is the end game.
so who do you think is Endgame?
Oh, the emperor or the future emperor this time. The abuser from the previous timeline, bad boy with the most power.
Can I ask then? Weird question. A little bit off topic. Who do you think is the Endgame and villains are destined to die? Because I know the ending of that series.
I'm gonna go at it again. It's the crazy emperor guy.
I love that. I love that for you. But yeah, I don't have much more to say about this. I'm excited that we're getting near the end. So,
Yeah, I'm actually finishing one of these. What do you know?
all right. Well, we'll be back next time with something else to read. Tell us what you if you know if you're reading along with us in the comments, etc. Somebody commented on one of these videos before, so if you're still watching, comment, like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.